Well, after the January 6th insurrection, a 7-foot high fence was put up around the Capitol, and it's still there. Bloomberg Businessweek policy and politics editor Amanda Hurley joins me now with more on the statehood fight that this fence is spurring. Amanda, thanks so much for being here. So let's take a step back here because you're in Washington, D.C. What's it like there? What has it been like there since the insurrection on January 6th?
Yeah, well, I'd say bear in mind that a lot of people are still staying, very close to home because of the pandemic. So it's not it wouldn't be normal life, as usual anyway. But obviously in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, people were fairly traumatized and concerned, I think, about, violence continuing in the city. I would say that after Biden's inauguration, I think some of those fears have subsided a little bit. People are hoping things kind of get back to normal, and I think hoping to put the events of January 6th behind them a little bit more. But meanwhile, there's a huge fenced compound in the middle of Washington still, and it's going to remain there for a while longer.
Wow. So how is this fence and the relationship that the city has with law enforcement, how is that feeding into the statehood movement in the district?
Yeah, well, it's really about kind of the city's relationship with the federal government and the tensions there, and how kind of ramped up security measures, imposed by kind of the feds over the years have often been a source of friction between the two, because the district is not, it has unique political status, right? It's not in a state. It's a federal district. And it has some autonomy. I mean, it elects its own mayor and council, but is still subject to the authority of Congress on certain things. It has to deliver bills to Congress, for review before they can become law. Ultimately, its budget is subject to the control of Congress. So for the 700,000 people who live in D.C., there has been a push for statehood for quite some time now. But to them, the walling off of Congress and other, actually really a huge chunk of the city downtown, is just this kind of physical representation for them of, here's a place where we don't even have representation, right? D.C. does not have a voting member of the House of Representatives or senators, and now they're literally fencing us out from it. So it definitely has come to symbolize for some people in the district their lack of full political representation.
Well, we're looking at some of the pictures that you yourself took right now on screen of the tall fences that are in the district right now. And I think, for a lot of people who don't live in Washington, D.C., don't necessarily think about this a lot, but it is pretty shocking, I think, that such a large number of people don't actually have representation, and the fact that they are so close to the nation's capital. Obviously, that's by design. But I do wonder, because you have this really interesting graphic in your piece that talks about this, Amanda, where Washington, D.C. would fit in if it would become a state. Where would it fit in when it comes to population, demographics, et cetera?
Well, yes, it would be definitely one of the smaller states. But as statehood advocates point out, it would not be the smallest. I think there are a couple of other states, like I want to say Wyoming and Vermont, that have fewer people than a state, Washington as a state would. So demographically, it would be, I believe, have the highest proportion of Black residents, and I have quite. I think it would be quite high up in terms of share of Hispanic residents as well. So it would definitely look different from some of the other states in the union. But I think one point on that has been a reason that statehood has been somewhat controversial or thrown up some objections is it would be politically, the number of Democratic voters in Washington is extremely high. I mean, it would be, really one of the most democratic, if not the most democratic leaning states in the union. And, that is certainly a reason that, Republicans are not on board with statehood.
Bloomberg's Amanda Hurley. Amanda, we got to leave it there. Thanks for your time, and thanks for sending along those photos, too, of your home in Washington, D.C. We appreciate you joining us this morning.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.